Welcome to the Goddess Conjurer podcast and show. I'm Christina Margaret, a holistic empowerment and sobriety coach. I'm also a spiritual badass and truth seeker. Join me as I chat with wicked guests who are down to get real with raw, unfiltered conversations inspired to help you level up your spiritual and personal expansion. So settle in, get cozy, get ready, and let's enjoy the ride. Hey guys, I'm Christina. Welcome to the Goddess Conjurer podcast and show. I have had this little talk prepared for, I don't know, probably a week or two, but I haven't got around to it. But I really wanted to talk about trauma today and like how that actually affects people individually. And it's kind of in relation to the last 2 years. And because there's just no denying how traumatizing the last 2 years really have been, no matter and what side. I don't really like using I'll use quotations there because it doesn't really matter where you stand on these lines of division that have been created. Trauma is the common theme, and because trauma, yes, it carries a lot of depth, but simply it's just defined as anything in which an event or situation where a person feels under threat. And that has taken place several times over the past 2 years. So I know that myself personally, at the beginning of the pandemic, all of my trauma was triggered, and I was deeply terrified, to be quite honest, of everything that was playing out. I was really sucked into, I will call it, the mainstream media narrative of everything going on. And it was quite impossible to not feel fear on some level of this like level of unknown that was taking place. Businesses were closed down, schools were closed down, we were literally locked away in our homes. So that is a feeling of being under threat. And for myself, I have a very trauma sensitive body. I've experienced a lot of, trauma in my life that has molded my nervous system to be in a place of high alert at a lot of times. And I had not at that point in time dealt with the depth of trauma within myself that I have now. So interesting timing for all of this to take place, even for the opportunities that I was given personally in that first year of the pandemic to do some real deep healing that got me real about my shit and how much trauma I was actually carrying around. So I'm pretty trauma informed throughout all the coaching programs that I've taken. There's been trauma training, trauma informed training. There's been training to do with the neuroscience of trauma. And then on top of that, I've taken extra trauma training because I'm quite fascinated by it. And it's because of my own experiences, right? It's because of my own trauma body of being so sensitive for so many years and struggling so badly with anxiety and panic attacks and, just an inability to be present, an inability to be within my own body. And my reactions to my trauma body and to those sensitivities really led me deeply into my addictive behaviors that then crushed my well-being as a person on this planet and molded everything of who I am now. Thank God on the other side of this, but also all of that self-sabotaging behavior, all of those beliefs that I've had about myself and just how my body reacted to being present and its inability to be present. So I wrote out quite a few little tips about trauma that I wanted to kind of talk about today that pertain more to the last 2 years. So it would be nearly impossible to deny that the last 2 years on Earth have been traumatizing, because everyone at some point has had to make tough choices or had their livelihood, and safety threatened, even whatever that threat might look like for you. But this is the complexity of trauma. And this is because, in fact, the trauma is actually individual. Yes, we have collective trauma, systemic trauma. There's different layers. That's why it is so complex. But trauma itself is an individual experience. Sorry, it's early. So in that individuality, every person has their own experience to what is traumatic. And in that experience, there is a response that is based on a very personal level biologically. So as trauma is individual to you and me, we will all experience differently, depending on our own nervous system. So something that may be a traumatic experience for one is not necessarily traumatic for the other. It has to do with your traumatic lineage, your own traumatic history, your own nervous system, and your own ability, coping skills, self-regulation. All of these things run really, really deep. So that is why we have each had such individual responses to the pandemic itself. And that's because what the nervous system does in its individual response, its only job, the only thing the nervous system cares about, because it's an old part of the brain that this all lives in, is keeping you alive. That's all it does. And so when anyone is faced with any kind of trauma, their response to this event is going to be what their brain thinks is going to keep them alive. So and this is a lot of information and it takes a long time to understand it, but I feel like that's like mostly the most simplified. And I know that I'm on this planet for many reasons that I don't even know yet. And at this point in time, my spiritual evolution knows that I'm having a human experience, and that one day my body will go back to the earth and that my spirit will go to the ether. And there is a knowing that takes place in that makes the situation different and deeper, that we're here for more than this. So why I say this and why I explain this idea of trauma is because I just want to invite people to just take a breath and to be easy on yourself, not only for your own experience, but maybe be easy to others around you that don't make the same choices as you. Because as you're being judged or they're being judged and shamed, others, or yourself are being judged for their experience not matching yours, there is a higher part of you that knows there's more than this. And there's a future part of you that's already survived this current experience and that knows that this is happening and it is supposed to be happening for your growth, and your growth is not dependent on the choices of others. And so in that, you're granted permission to be yourself, even when you are being told that you don't know what's best for you, and that you should question your own beliefs and that you should question your own intuitive thought. There's a part of you that knows that this is a bit of a puppet show and that we have all become attached to it, and that isn't the best interest of being a human living on this planet, or as being part of the nature that we actually belong to, that we have come from, and that we are a part of. This too shall pass means everything, not just what is bad and uncomfortable, because we often want to use that term in those circumstances only. You were not born into the world to be part of political systems. We just weren't. And so there's an agenda taking place there because everything is opportunity. So when you stop and breathe, you know this, right? But then what happens, it is this conditioning that's holding you. It is the trauma and the attachment to the stories that keep you going back to this idea of binary right and wrong. Because answers make us feel safe. Logic makes us feel safe. And we're not taught to listen to the deeper inner parts of us that actually just already know. We're questioning ourselves constantly. So instead of knowing everything just is, and trusting yourself and your ability to heal in all the ways, you're questioning. And then when we see someone making other choices that don't match ours, we question them. And because their choice makes us feel unsafe, we judge them, we shame them, and then these divides happen. So allow yourself to trust yourself to know. Trust yourself to make choices for yourself. Surrender by listening to your inner truth. Reawaken your soul. Listen to the deeper parts of you because they exist outside of this noise. And that's really all I wanted to share, was just this maybe ability to let go a little, this opportunity or invitation to let go of judging so much, judging everything and questioning everything. When you listen deeply, you know, and that's not the things that we're taught. Unfortunately, that's not what we're taught, but we can change that narrative. You can change that narrative. Every moment that, you know, a thought comes into your mind is an opportunity to either accept it or to shift it. So I invite you to listen a little deeper to yourself, and I invite you to reawaken those pieces of you and your soul and start to pay attention to the parts of you that are reacting. Why are they reacting? How are they reacting? And do they serve you and your greater good as a being on this planet? Thanks so much for watching. Have a great day. I hope there wasn't too much dog snoring in the background. Take care.
I came from the mud.